considering these trends, I mean, we will continue to go on and on. If we start analyzing the foibles of this government, many Nigerians, right-thinking Nigerians, are of the opinion that there is a need for a radical overhaul of this democracy. And
did you say democracy? Okay.
Depending on the context of which we understand our democracy. And I would like to ask you, what kind of reform agenda should be adopted now to reboot this democracy? I mean, and actually improve the engagement of the citizens themselves.
You see, I have never been a friend of linguistic inexactitudes.
How do you mean?
You're just guilty of two in that question. The first, you spoke to how to reform our democracy. There is a presumption embedded in that question that you have a democracy. That's the first one. In concluding your question, you then spoke about citizens' engagement. That also presumes the presence of citizens.
Unfortunately, from your analysis,
no, it's not my analysis. It's no.
Citizens.
No. It's not my analysis. It's the truth. Whether people like the truth or not is immaterial. When you use words are meant to mean something. I know that words come to Nigeria to assume new meanings. It's happened before. When the Englishman uses the word bogus, it means false. But when we use it in Nigeria, it means big. He has a bogus house. The house is big. That means he has an expansive mansion by Nigerian standard. So the word bogus, which means false in one English, came to Nigeria and became another thing entirely. And even amongst native speakers of English language, the word nice once meant stupid. Even though today it means that it's nice, it's a good thing, right? But when it comes to certain universal precepts, we must be careful not to allow Nigeria to do what it usually does. Take a word and then twist its meaning and then sometimes introduce qualifiers. Federalism is one of them. It came to Nigeria to have an adjunct. They call it true federalism. So now you are punctuating federalism. It is an introduction intended to masquerade and cover up for a lie. Nigeria is no longer a federation. So we have to lie and talk about true federalism. So now to bring it to the question you've asked. Number one, Nigeria is not a democracy. Let's be clear about that. The last time the will of the Nigerian people was involved in Nigeria, Nigeria had 4 regions. To create the 4th region, they had a plebiscite. They moved motion in the regional House of Assembly, in the Western House of Assembly. When it passed, they brought it to the Federal House of Representatives. It passed. They held plebiscite, and then they created a region out of the Western region. Since that time, when we had 4 regions, at the coming of the military in 1966, 4 regions. Today, we have 36 states. 32 states were created without anyone being consulted. It was crooks, armed robbers, uniformed bandits like Obasanjo, like Babangida, like Abacha. Those were the people creating states, exercising the prerogative of the Nigerian people. And you know what else they did? Those states became revenue sharing centers, feeding trough at the table of Nigerian greed. So when we talk about democracy, what is the democracy we have in Nigeria? The last time the Nigerian people expressed their will freely, we had a parliamentary system of government. We had a federation of 4 regions. Individual votes counted. Regions were allowed to develop at their own pace, based on their own overarching ideology. Today, you have 36 states. The vote of the people do not count. The states are not federating units because it is the federal government that creates local governments for them. We are not even a unitary state, because if we were unitary, you wouldn't have a situation where the state governor cannot even make rules relating to COVID restriction in his own state in Nigeria. In the UK, which is a unitary system, The mayor of Manchester refused to follow the UK Prime Minister's directive because he said his own local conditions are not the same as what was obtaining in London at the time. That shows you the extent of decentralization in a system that is supposedly unitary. In Nigeria, the governor is said to be the chief security officer of the state, but he cannot speak. If the commissioner of police likes, can ignore his call. If there is a superior order from the federal, what federal? So when you talk about democracy in Nigeria, let's understand that democracy is only found in the expression of the right to self-determination. The right to self-determination covers every right of citizenship. It's not just about the right to earn a vote to divide the country. That's not what self-determination is about. Self-determination is about the right to decide as a human being and as a citizen based on the collective democratic will of the people. That is the meaning of democracy. It is the bedrock of democracy. It is absent in Nigeria. In the First Republic, even in the time of the colonial masters, there were independent candidates in elections. You don't have that anymore in this democracy that we are practicing. And then it dovetails into the question of citizenship. Citizens participate in democracies. Citizens. That is why you have universal adult suffrage. But when you have a situation where the right of the citizen has been diminished by the impunity of the governing class, you cannot call what is. In fact, even the citizens themselves, quote and unquote, have come to realize their impotence. So you find situations where, as I've said variously, somewhere as enlightened as Ondo State, they are having elections and you are hearing slogans like Dibo Sebe, Dibo Ko Sebe, will give you enough money to cook a pot of soup for your vote. That was the same Ondo State, where men were fried for tinkering with the vote just a generation ago. So it tells you the gradual devaluation of the vote and the inherent devaluation of the citizenship.
You say you have still yet to answer the question.
Which one of them?
How do we get ourselves? I mean, what kind of?
That. No,
because I mean, it is assumed or presumed to go.
See, let me say this, and it's a simple, straightforward thing. Whether Nigerians like it or not, there's going to be some form of revolution in Nigeria, in one way or the other. If our ruining crash would have its way, instead of having a revolution, we might end up having anarchy. And then the reigning class will seek to impose order based on its own intention to retain power. But where we are headed is clear as daylight, that we are entering a mode where a gridlock becomes inevitable if there isn't a revolution. What is a revolution? It's important that this be defined. It should be defined properly, because having had a succession of African bandits and crooks in military uniform who have used the word revolution liberally, and then the effort of the Nigerian government, particularly since Yele's challenge to them with Revolution Now movement, what you find is that there is a concerted effort to demonize the word revolution and criminalize it. Well, it's a simple thing. Revolution comes from the root, revolve. What it simply means is turn around. Nigeria is heading straight towards the abyss. Anything that alters its trajectory to make it turn away from its course towards destruction is a revolution. Whether that revolution comes by way of a revolutionary movement in the 2023 election, if we survive up till 2023, or it comes by way of a movement that takes over the Nigerian street, north, west, south, and east, and forces the powers that be to recognize the need for a turnaround. Anything that turns us from where we are headed is a revolution. So, but the difference between a revolution and anarchy is the presence of a plan. If there is no plan behind which the people are mobilized when they are making their demands, if there isn't a clear-cut plan understood by everybody as the basis of the mobilization and the basis behind which you have asked the people to rise, what you have is anarchy. That happened in Sudan recently, until the same order that was being removed, the reimposed order, even though it pretended to have changed. Anarchy was also what set in after the NSAS protests were put down by the state. The state allowed a measure of anarchy in order to justify the imposition of force. It was deliberate. By all accounts given by each and every one of the witnesses that had been taken before the Lekki panel, even the police witness, everybody had attested to the peaceful nature of the protest. But it was a protest. The protest was about a single unit of the Nigerian police and SARS, right?
Yeah.
So what the people protesting against SARS did not factor into their thinking is that it is the system that produced SARS that they needed to be focusing on. So they were focused on the fruit. They were not focused on the tree. When they focused on the fruit long enough, the tree turned around and said, okay, we'll turn it to SWAT. He said, but a few months ago, you called this SWAT already. At that point, something was crystallized for both the protesters and those to whom they presumed to protest. Those being protested to fathered the person that you are protesting against. And he sees your protest as a direct affront on his own impunity. And you who was protesting, you suddenly realize that, holy, we are protesting end SARS. What about end impunity? What about end bad governance in Nigeria? So a lot of end this, end that began to crop up. Now, if before the protests to end SARS was called, there had been a clear-cut plan behind which the people were then being mobilized or were already mobilized, killing people at the toll gate would not allow the room for the anarchy because the people would have been focused on a plan. A plan would have anticipated the predictable reaction of the Nigerian state. The most predictable thing about the Nigerian state is that it is murderous. It is designed to protect itself. So the state has grown stronger than the citizens. So every time it considers itself threatened, it was always going to react viscerally with violence. That was always predictable. And if it had been gamed into the thinking, we would have known that, okay, you know what? When you ask for this, this will happen, and then you do this. But there was no plan for the day after because nobody factored in the brutality of the Nigerian state. Those protesting were the generation who did not inhale the tear gas that my generation inhaled. Oromodie, Komaudi, Iya Elumasha. We know the Nigerian state for the evil that it truly is. Those protesting in NSAS, they thought they were dealing with a democracy. They thought they were citizens of a modern state. Those presumptions are the reasons why I always speak to linguistic exactitude. It is important and critical that those who would engage the Nigerian state should never ever be in doubt as to the nature of the evil they have to contend with. The Nigerian state is not a benign moral entity. It is a vile, evil, cannibalistic state. Thinks nothing of consuming his own young.
Let me ask your view on this, and I'd like you to speak to it. Earlier on, you talked about the revolution, and is it fair to say that Nigerians have given up hope that these issues will be resolved? I mean, you also talked about the Nigerians' impotency, so to say.
You know, I think the major failure of those who have sought to bring about the Nigerian revolution is that they had presumed that they could somehow turn themselves to Voltron and revolt on behalf of the people. That doesn't happen. Revolutions don't happen like that. Revolutions only happen when you have consciously awakened the people to the reality of their circumstances and the possibilities inherent in their future. If you have not connected them to a future that you can't, even you can only see it because of your capacity to envision, that future that you are seeing, that you are calling them to, you must communicate it sufficiently to the point where they understand that their current being is transient, and that even though they might die in pursuit of that goal, it wouldn't matter because their children and their children's children would enjoy what they might not enjoy. It is what causes you to plant trees on avenues you might not walk. Plant the seed for fruits that you might never eat of. It doesn't matter. There is an higher ideal that you're walking towards. If you believe sufficiently in the correctness of your path, then you stick with it. It is possible. Look, there is a commonality of purpose, of affliction that is waiting to be harnessed. If I sit down in Lagos and I begin to wax lyrical about the injustice of the Buhari regime and its Fulanization agenda, and then I conveniently gloss over the fact that even as he is supposedly pursuing his Fulani agenda, the first line victims are actually the Fulani peasantry. Then I realized very quickly, the Fulani have always lived with feudalism. The class system, which is endemic in Nigeria today, is actually a direct offshoot of the feudalization of the totality of Nigeria itself. So the first people who suffers from all the problems of Nigeria are those who are in the lowest classes. And who are these people when you go to the supposed north-south divide? The people of Kankara, the people in Goza, the people in Jos, the people, so many people trapped within these places who are suffering from the misrule, but who have been conveniently labeled north or conveniently labeled south. Come on. So for me, I believe that when we who have sought the change in Nigeria come to the point of recognizing the fact that this north-south thing is actually a distraction we should be careful with, and that we should also understand very quickly that all around the country, north, east, west, and south, there are huge numbers of Nigerians whose afflictions mirrors each other. The Kankara man is as unsafe as the man in Igbo. In fact, he's more unsafe. And when he gets killed or robbed, we don't even have too much sympathies coming from him from a part of the country because he has been classed as part of the oppressor. Meanwhile, he is the first line victim. So, Nigerian revolution is not a far-fetched fantasy, but it is not something that will fall on our laps. We will need to work for it, because those who benefit from our current state are happy when we focus on our north-south divide, Christian-Muslim divide.
Now, let me also get your view on this issue with regards to the secessionist agitators. We have the Yoruba nation, or the Yoruba nation secession, who had the secessionist agenda. We have the IPOP themselves. Why have they failed? Isn't that part of the need to revolve or change the system? And instead of Nigerians resigning themselves or accepting they can't do resignation, what should be done to turn this around?
See here, I once had this idiocy that afflicted me, and that was when I used to presume to think I know what is best for everyone. I would even go as far as to even chastise those I considered secessionists. But as I've grown older, perhaps, or maybe it was since I shaved my madman's lock, what I found is that I am more tolerant of those opinions and movements, and my reasons are simple. It is not for me to tell the oppressed the extent of what his reactions or responses should be. If I merely tell the oppressed how he should respond to his oppressor, when I have no influence over what the oppressor is doing or will do, that renders me complicit in the oppression. IPOB has determined in his own wisdom that it has had enough of the Nigerian state. I have myself. I've had enough of the Nigerian state. But when I say the Nigerian state, I'm not referring to the Nigerian peoples. I'm not referring to the Nigerian territory. I'm referring to the governing system. And I have, in my own stupidity or wisdom, elected how to engage with that system. But it is not my place to tell IPOB and Nnamdi Kanu how it should respond to the oppression, because undoubtedly the Igbos have been marginalized. The template for Nigerian inequities was always trialed out against the Igbo, and that is what has gone pan-Nigerian today. So there is no injustice in Nigeria that didn't start out being trialed out on Igbo in Nigeria. So if Igbo has gotten to the point where it could no longer stomach or bear the Nigerian excesses, I can hardly be heard. I no longer condemn anything anyone cares to do. I hope and pray that they will stay within the limit of sanity and avoid bloodshed, such as the one we've been seeing. IPOB will come out and say it's not the one. And if he's denying it, I'm not in a place to pin on it what I know the Nigerian state is equally capable of doing. I am not IPOB spokesman. People get killed in the southeast, and IPOB will come out and say it's not the one. Unknown gunmen, unknown men. And you have all kinds. This is the same country where people were killed at the toll gate, and the state says it knows. So unknown soldier, not be today for Nigeria. You have unknown soldier, you have unknown IPOB, you have unknown gunmen, you have unknown government. So it's a situation where it's me, as far as I'm concerned, I have no condemnation for IPOB. When it comes to, let's bring it home, the Odua Republicans, I am as afflicted as any one of them, and I'm a Yoruba man. If you're going to have an Odua Republic, it means that you expect me to be a citizen of that republic. If there's going to be a war to free that republic, I'm expected to also be a part of that war. I understand it for what it is. It's a reaction to injustice. It's a reaction to inequities. But I also know that there are ongoing efforts amongst Yoruba elders. I am aware that there are ongoing efforts to have a clear strategy to deal with the different issues that we are confronting. What I will say is this: the Yorubas were the first believer in Nigeria. Let people go back and read their history. The first secessionists in Nigeria were the Fulani rulers of northern Nigeria. Ahmadu Bello was the first to move secession in this country. It took Awolowo's, shall I say, persuasions to even get Azikiwe to accept federalism as the basis for a Nigerian nation. Leading up to the independence, the 1951 constitution collapsed because it was too unitary. The 1954 constitution was brought as a consensus, agreed by all, that Nigeria should be governed as a federal state. Without that agreement to accept federalism, there would have never been a Nigerian state at independence. It would have been broken immediately. So you have a situation where the compromise position that started this country was federalism that was championed by Obafemi Awolowo. That federalist state is what has been destroyed today. The agitations you are finding all over Nigeria demanding restructuring is in reaction to the destruction of the federal entity. That's why they are talking true federalism. There is nothing true about what we have. It's a lie. It's not a federal state any longer. Now, the Yorubas are not going to turn our own soil into the battleground for the fulfillment of anybody's fantasies. Those who seek war in Nigeria would be isolated. Take that and take it to the bank. Those who seek war in Nigeria, seeking to dominate others and bend every other person to their will, should know the Yorubas are what you call adubuleja. We do not react. We never react. We respond. At the appropriate time, there will be responses. We have never ever been enslaved in our own land. Never. The Yorubas have never been conquered and never been enslaved in our own land. It's not going to start now.